Hello, welcome in. Today I just want to talk about January and all the books that I read in January. It was actually a really good month and I'm surprised I got to read as much as I did because it was also a really busy month for school. I had a lot of presentations to prepare for, but they went really well. Actually, one of them was so fun. We did kind of like a student conference on the topic of monstrous identities, and I did my whole presentation on the film Crimson Peak, which, if you don't know, is one of my all-time favorite films. I love it so much. I literally never shut up about it, and this presentation I was like finally a captive audience to listen to me talk about Crimson Peak, and it was very fun. So the first few books I'm going to talk about were for this project. First of all, I got to re-explore my Art of Darkness book. This came out with the film, and it's just kind of like a behind the scenes of, you know, making the film and Del Toro's kind of like story development process and like the costume design and like how they built the set and all of that, and it has all these cool little like inserty doodads. Like, it's just so cool. Always fun to revisit this. And then I also read a few like, you know, scholarly academic books from the university library, but they were really interesting. This one is called Gothic Afterlives, and it's about reincarnations of horror in film and popular media. So like modern retellings or modern stories that are inspired by Gothic tales of the past, which of course Crimson Peak is. And there's a whole chapter on Crimson Peak in this book, which I was so excited about. Like, finally, she's getting the respect she deserves, and I just love that. And then the second one was Victorian Hauntings, Spectrality, Gothic, the Uncanny, and Literature. Says, like, what does it mean to read or write with ghosts, or to suggest that acts of reading or writing are haunted? I don't know. It was just really interesting. So that is what I have been doing for university stuff recently. Anyways, on to the books that I kind of read for fun this month. Kind of still related to this, I did decide to finally read Jane Eyre. I think we all know by now that I really love the Gothic genre. I'm considering writing my master's thesis on something related to that, and yet I've never read one of the most like popular, famous, inspiring Gothic texts. But no longer, I finally read it, and I have to say, it was kind of silly. To be honest, like, it was really good and I really enjoyed it and loved it. I loved the atmosphere, the vibe, just the feeling of everything being kind of like dark and dreary and creepy. And I loved that Jane as a character had a very strong sense of what she knew she wanted and believed was right, and she always stood for that. She stayed true to it. She loved herself, she respected herself, and good for her. But also at times I could not take this book seriously because it was just so silly goofy. Like, first of all, Rochester, the like love interest, it was such a walking ick from page 1. The man has not one redeeming characteristic, and yet Jane is gaga, and him and Jane together were so melodramatic. Like, everything was such drama. It was really giving like middle school relationship. They were so edgy and emo in like the cringiest, most embarrassing way possible. I loved it. It was beautiful and wonderful, but the secondhand embarrassment, I legitimately wanted to cry sometimes. Anyways, some other things that I read in January. First of all, I read a Penguin teen arc for the Invocations by Krystal Sutherland. This is the same author who wrote House of Hollow, which I really loved. And this book was also so good. Basically, it is about 3 young women. One of them is a witch who helps other women get what's called invocations, which is basically like a pact with a little demon to give the woman some kind of power or magic. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the women who this witch has helped get invocations are turning up as the victims of a serial killer that's going around. Then the other 2 girls, one of them is a really rich, like, daughter of a billionaire, but she has a busted invocation. Broken. It was done really poorly and really cheaply, and it's ruining her life, basically, so she needs the witch's help to fix that. And then the other character is a girl whose sister was killed, probably by the serial killer, and she really wants to bring her sister back to life. So she needs magic, she needs the witch's help to do that. And that's how they all kind of come together, and in the process realize that they really need to figure out what's going on with this serial killer. And it's really just a story about like women claiming power in a world that hates them for having power and wants to stop them from having any of it or take away what they have. And you can really feel all of the like rage and the desperation in this kind of really dark setting, and the events of the book are also really dark and kind of brutal at times. I really enjoyed this book. I loved that all 3 of the main characters were so different and come from such different worlds, and yet they're still experiencing so much of the same stuff. And I also want to note that while this book does have like a gender-based magic system, in the sense that only women can make deals with demons because the demons don't trust men to like keep their end of the bargain, which is so funny to me. It's also made sure to be very inclusive in that. And there's even a line where somebody asks like, okay, what about trans women? And the answer is that demons don't care about your body, they care about what's in your soul. And I think that that was just so nice. And I enjoyed this book. I do think that the first half was a little bit slow. It took me a while to get into it, but then the last half, the payoff was so good. Like once the action picks up, it was all worth it, and I loved this. I also read an audiobook on Librofm, my favorite audiobook platform. There is a link to it down below if you're interested, but I read Let's Get Quizzical, which is a romance about a girl who goes on like a trivia game show, and when she meets the teammate that the show has assigned her to be on her team, it is her ex-boyfriend who broke her heart and who she doesn't like, but they have to like behave civilly with each other in order to be on the show and win all this money and stuff, which they both really need. First of all, I think that this was a really cute setup. I love that whole thing, and all the tropes that I really enjoy are in here, like second chance romance, enemies to lovers, forced proximity, just A+ all around. But there is something that really stopped me from liking it overall, and that was the fact that the obstacle, like the whole conflict between them, is so shallow. And to me, it just made the girl character feel really like unreasonable and uncompassionate. And it is a point of character growth within the novel and everything, which I totally understand, but I do wish that the obstacle itself had been something more compelling and more reasonable and like more relatable to begin with. You know what I mean? So anyways, the characters were really sweet and I loved their chemistry and everything, and it was a nice book, but I also I couldn't get on board with this girl and her reasoning. The next book that I listened to on Librofm was Anniebot, and this was so good. This is one of the best things that I've ever listened to. Basically, the setup is that robots have been invented and people can buy personal robots to clean your house, take care of your kids, whatever, and Annie is basically she's a sex robot, and the guy that owns her, his name is Doug, he actually really treats her like an entire girlfriend. Like he really wants her to be basically a real person that he has a real relationship with, and so he sets her up to be self-teachable so that basically her programming allows her to learn and develop based on her experiences and just become more real and more human over time. And the story is from her point of view as she goes through all of this, and I loved this so much. I think that this was such an incredible exploration of like gender roles and power dynamics in domestic relationships. I've seen a lot of people talk about this in the context of AI and the future of technology and robots and stuff, but honestly, for me, the whole story, all the character development, all the things that Annie struggles with, it's not about her being a robot, it's about her being a woman. A lot of her like inner calculations and negotiations that happen in her head, like for example, she'll notice, okay, Doug's body language here is indicating that he is 17% annoyed. My objective is to bring that annoyance level down below a 5%. Here are my options. If I do this option, there's a 40% chance he'll get more annoyed. There's this chance that this will, and so much of that felt so real and so true to like the inner experiences of, I think, anybody who has any kind of like deep insecurity and trauma in relationships, or anyone, I think anybody who's kind of been socialized in a way that's like you only exist as an object for someone else. Like you're only here to make other people happy, and watching Annie struggle with that task and the task of building an identity, but only the one that Doug wants her to have. And like, yeah, become more real, become a real person, but only the type of person that I want you to be. It was so good. It was so well done. And I also think there's so much nuance in it. Like Doug himself is a very complex, nuanced character, and the relationship between them has a lot of complexity. And it was so good. In January, I also read some graphic novels. The first one, I reread the entire Saga series, and I think the last 2 or 3 volumes were new to me. I had not read them before. So I got caught up and read the new ones, and I love this series. If you don't know, it is a sci-fi series about 2 people who are from different planets that are at war with each other, but they end up falling in love and having a child, and now the whole galaxy hates them and is after them, and it follows all of their adventures and their child growing up in all of this. Love the story so much, and I love watching Hazel grow up and who she's becoming. I will say the last, I don't remember what volume it is, but one of the last ones, How Dare They? If you know, you know, how dare they? How could they do that to me personally? But still, I'm enjoying it. I love it. Even after all the years that have passed since the first time I read it, I feel like I still love it just as much this time. I will say that this time around, you know, you notice some things that are like, ooh, maybe people were saying that commonly in 2016, but it's really like not a great thing to be saying. But in general, I think at its heart, the story it's telling and everything is still really good. And then the other graphic novel that I read was Moth Keeper. This is from the same person who did The Tea Dragon Society, which I absolutely loved. I don't think that I enjoyed this as much, but I mean, it's still a really cute, really beautiful, like little heartwarming story about a character who hangs out with magical moths. Like, what more do you want, really? Honestly, it was cute and I did like it. But that is everything that I read in January. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of this or if you plan to read any of this. I would love to know, and I would also love to know what you read in January and if anything was really good. Let me know how your month was. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I really hope that I get to talk to you soon.